Sir, stop right there. We need to talk to you.
I need to get to my car. I am freezing. I just pulled a child out of the lake.
That is what we need to discuss. What were you doing with that child in the water?
What was I doing? I was saving him. He was drowning.
Circumstances seem suspicious. Adult male alone with children in deserted area. Child in distress.
Andrew Washington never thought a quiet day at the park could turn into a nightmare. It was March 14th, cold, gray skies, and the lake like glass reflecting nothing but clouds. He had pulled his jacket tight and was walking alone along Riverside Lake, enjoying the solitude. No emergency calls, no chaos, just him, the water, and a peaceful afternoon. But that peace shattered with a scream. Help! Somebody help! Andrew froze for a second, heart hammering. Then he ran. Around a bend in the trail, he saw them. Two boys near the water, one screaming, pointing. The other was in the lake, struggling, thrashing, gasping. The water was freezing, 50 degrees, cold enough to stop a heart in minutes. Andrew did not think. He stripped off his jacket and shoes and hit the water. The cold stabbed every inch of his body. His chest seized, his muscles cramped, but training kicked in. Army training, EMT training, firefighter instincts. He swam 20 feet, reaching the boy just as he slipped under the water again. Andrew pulled him up, holding him in a rescue position, fighting numbness and pain. On the grass, he checked the pulse, checked the breathing. Nothing. For a long moment, it seemed hopeless. Then, focusing on compressions, he went to work. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Again. Then again. And finally, the boy coughed, gasped, eyes fluttered open. Marcus, the other boy, was crying, terrified. Is he okay? Is Owen okay? Andrew nodded, hands shaking violently from cold. Stay still. He's breathing. You're safe now. Andrew started moving toward his car, wet, shaking, desperate to get warm. That's when he saw the police. Officer Derek Walsh stepped onto the trail, eyes narrowed, body camera activated, looking at Andrew not as a hero, but as a suspect. Andrew froze. He had faced worse in combat, faced enemies in Iraq and Afghanistan, but never suspicion like this at home, after saving a child's life. Sir, stop right there. Police, we need to talk to you. I need to get to my car. I'm freezing. I just pulled a child out of the lake, Andrew said, teeth chattering. That is what we need to discuss. What were you doing with that child in the water? Walsh demanded, eyes scanning him like a predator. Andrew blinked, trying to process the accusation. What was I doing? I was saving him. He was drowning. I performed CPR. I saved his life. Walsh's partner, Officer Nicole Chen, arrived, positioning herself beside him. The circumstances seemed suspicious. Adult male alone with children in a deserted area. Child in distress, sir. We need to verify what happened. Andrew's pulse quickened. He could not believe what he was hearing. After what he had just done, this was how he was treated. Marcus stepped forward, crying. He saved Owen. He saved him. Why are you stopping him? Son, step back. We are handling this, Chen said. But Walsh ignored Marcus, turning back to Andrew. Sir, we need to see identification, and we need you to explain why you were in the water with this child. Andrew tried to explain, words trembling. I heard screaming. The child was drowning. I'm trained. I'm a firefighter. I'm an EMT. I responded to an emergency. I saved his life. So you did not know these children before today? Walsh asked, pen poised. No, I never saw them before. I was walking. I heard a child screaming. I saved a life. Walsh's eyes narrowed. And you just happened to be in this deserted area when these children were here alone. Andrew's blood boiled. Are you suggesting I did something wrong? I saved that child's life. We are investigating. An adult male alone with a child in a deserted park requires investigation. Walsh said, cold, rehearsed. Because he was Dira-Wanaying. Onder shouted, voice cracking. The crowd around them had grown. Parents, passers-by, people who saw the rescue. He saved Owen. He jumped in and saved him. He did CPR. Walsh had made up his mind. Hands came out. Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back. You are being detained for investigation. Onder froze. Detained for what? Child endangerment. Suspicious contact with a minor. Possible assault. Turn around. Assault? I performed CPR. I saved him from dying. Shen grabbed his arm. Handcuffs snapped on his wrists. Cold metal biting through wet skin. Marcus screamed, crying. He did not do anything wrong. He saved my friend. Andre Washington, 40 years old, Purple Heart recipient, Bronze Star with Valor, Army Ranger, firefighter, EMT, had just saved a child's life. And now he was being arrested by Officer Derek Walsh, a man with 14 prior complaints of racial profiling. The crowd yelled, voices rising. This is wrong. He's a hero. But Walsh read Andre his rights like he was reading a script. You have the right to remain silent. Andre's mind raced. He had faced insurgents in Fallujah, bullets and shrapnel. Near death countless times. But nothing prepared him for being criminalized for courage, for heroism, simply because of the color of his skin. Before we continue, I want to ask you, where are you watching this from? And if you haven't yet, please subscribe so you don't miss the next part of Andre's story. You need to hear what happens when courage meets prejudice, and how one man fought back against a system built to protect the wrong people. Andre Washington sat in the cold, hard chair of the interrogation room, damp clothes clinging to his body. His teeth were still chattering, his hands stiff from the freezing lake water and the sudden arrest. Handcuffs bit into his wrists. The room smelled of bleach and old coffee. It was quiet except for the faint hum of the fluorescent light overhead. A door opened. Detective Karen Sullivan stepped in. 15 years on the force. Experienced. She had seen misconduct before. Arrests that didn't make sense. Officers abusing authority. But nothing like this. At least not this obvious. She had read Walsh's report. Black male, white child, physical contact, deserted park, suspicious circumstances. And she had read Walsh's personnel file. 14 complaints. All black civilians. All dismissed. All suspiciously convenient. She pulled out a chair and sat down. Mr. Washington, I'm Detective Sullivan. I need to ask you about what happened at the lake today. Andre looked at her, exhausted, furious, confused. I saved a drowning child. That is what happened. Officer Walsh arrested me because I am black. That is also what happened. Sullivan's pen hovered over her notebook. She didn't respond, but she listened. Walk me through the rescue. Why were you at the park? Day off. Went for a walk. Heard screaming. Saw a boy in the water, thrashing, not breathing. I jumped in, pulled him out, performed CPR. He started breathing. That's it. That's the story. And you had never seen these children before? Never. Officer Walsh's report says the circumstances appeared suspicious. A deserted park. You alone with children. Physical contact. Andre's jaw tightened. Suspicious? I saved a child. That's what happened. Officer Walsh has 14 complaints of racial profiling. 14. And nothing happened. He's still working. Now he arrests me, a decorated combat veteran and firefighter, for saving a child's life. That is your pattern in action, detective. That is the system failing. Sullivan wrote notes but said nothing. She knew he was right. Saying it aloud would be dangerous politically, but she could not ignore the facts. Did you touch the child? I pulled him from freezing water. I did CPR for 2 minutes. Yes, I touched him. That is called saving a life. There was a knock at the door. An officer whispered to Sullivan, then stepped back. Sullivan returned, nodding. The child you rescued is stable at the hospital. The other child, Marcus Hayes, is here with his parents. He has given a statement confirming your rescue. Andre closed his eyes, finally allowing a deep breath. Relief, anger, disbelief, all tangled in a knot inside him. Meanwhile, in another room, Marcus sat with his parents and a child advocate. The boy's eyes were red, but he spoke with clarity, recounting every detail. Owen and I were skipping rocks. He leaned too far and fell in. The water was really cold. He started screaming. I couldn't swim, so I couldn't help. I yelled for someone to save him. Then what happened? A man came running. A black man. He didn't ask questions. He just jumped in, pulled Owen out, did CPR. He saved Owen's life. Did you know this man? No. I never saw him before. What happened after Owen started breathing? He was shaking, really cold. He said he needed to get warm. Then a police officer stopped him and arrested him. Marcus looked at his parents, then back at the detective. I think it's because the man was black. He saved Owen and he should be a hero. But the officer treated him like he did something bad. And he didn't do anything bad. He saved my friend. Those words would later echo in the courtroom and in the lawsuit filings. They were simple, powerful, undeniable. Back in the interrogation room, Andre listened to the description of Marcus' statement. A small measure of justice, but it could not undo the shock, the humiliation, the cold metal on his wrists, the crowd's confusion, the fear of being treated like a criminal when he had just prevented a death. Sullivan spoke carefully. Mr. Washington, based on witness accounts, your rescue is verified. You are free to go. Officer Walsh acted outside policy. We apologize for the arrest. Andre stared at her. Error. That is what you call it. 14 complaints, unchecked for years. A system that allows abuse to continue. And now I am free because I have credentials and witnesses. Is that your idea of justice? At that moment, Sergeant Raymond Torres entered. Calm, methodical. Mr. Washington, I'm Sergeant Torres. On behalf of the department, what happened to you was wrong. Walsh is suspended pending full investigation. Your military service, your firefighting record, your actions today, all speak to your character. You should never have been treated as a criminal. Andre's voice was steady but sharp. I should never have been treated this way because I am black. Officer Walsh sees black men as guilty by default, and your department let him continue for 11 years. Torres nodded, silent acknowledgement, but there was work to do. Andre left the station, damp clothes and all, and saw his wife Simone waiting outside. Relief flooded her face. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around him. He broke. Shaking, exhausted, sobs held in for hours. I saved a child and they arrested me. Simone held him tighter. I know. We are going to fight this. For Andre, the fight had already begun in his mind. 11 years of military service, combat wounds, medals, and experience did not shield him. Being a hero was no defense in a society where patterns of prejudice went unchecked. But he had survived war, injury, trauma, and now he would survive this fight too. 6 weeks later, the lawsuit was filed. Washington v. City of Riverside, Officer Derek Walsh, Officer Nicole Chen. But this lawsuit was different. Anders' attorney had collected every single one of Walsh's 14 dismissed complaints. Bus driver, professor, nurse, coach, postal worker, father picking up a daughter. All black, all targeted, all released, all ignored. And now, one Purple Heart recipient arrested for heroism. The evidence was overwhelming. A pattern exposed. A city forced to confront its failures. Anders' case became a symbol. Courage criminalized, prejudice unchecked, and a system forced to answer. The first motions were filed. The city realized it could not win. Not just Anders' case, but against the pattern, the years of unaccountable misconduct, the witnesses, and the national attention that would follow. $7.8 million would eventually be paid. Not just to compensate Anders, but to punish a system that ignored injustice. Officer Derek Walsh faced termination. Officer Chen faced suspension and retraining. Internal affairs officers who ignored 14 complaints faced review, demotion, or termination. Finally, the system recognized its failure. Finally, accountability was enforced. But Anders Washington understood something more. Even heroism could not protect you from bias. Even medals could not stop systemic prejudice. And yet, patterns could be exposed. Systems could be forced to act. Courage mattered, not because it guaranteed safety, but because it demanded justice when confronted with injustice. This was not the end of Anders' story. It was only the beginning. The news spread fast. Anders Washington, Purple Heart recipient, Bronze Star with Valor, firefighter, and EMT, had been arrested after saving a drowning child. Social media had exploded. Photos of Anders in his wet clothes circulated. Videos of the rescue were shared, and the police body cam footage of Officer Walsh's arrest went viral. People could not believe it. A hero, a decorated war veteran, handcuffed after performing CPR. Anders and Simone sat in their small living room, phones buzzing nonstop. Texts from friends, family, fellow firefighters, and veterans poured in. Most messages were supportive, angry, and incredulous at how someone who saved a life could be treated like a criminal. But the Washingtons also received messages of concern. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Be careful. Anders' jaw tightened. He was okay physically, cold, wet, tired, but the emotional weight was crushing. Years of military service, risk, injury, and trauma had not prepared him for being criminalized for courage. His attorney, Marissa Lopez, called. She had spent weeks building a case. The lawsuit was more than a personal claim. It was a statement against a system that allowed Officer Walsh to act without accountability for 11 years. Every complaint Walsh had ever received, every dismissal, every ignored warning, had been documented and verified. Marissa had tracked down victims of Walsh's pretextual arrests. A bus driver stopped at his bus stop. A nurse questioned for theft in hospital scrubs. A father accused of child endangerment while picking up his daughter. All black, all innocent, all silenced. Anders. Marissa said during their video call, "This is bigger than just today. The evidence is overwhelming. 14 prior complaints, all ignored, and now the world can see what happened. The city knows it cannot defend Walsh. We will make them pay, not just for you, but for the pattern they ignored." Anders nodded, fists clenched. He had fought enemies in Fallujah, Helmand, and Kandahar. He had faced bullets, IEDs, and hand-to-hand combat. But this fight was different. This was home. This was systemic bias. This was authority turned against him because of the color of his skin. The city attorney responded quickly. Settlement negotiations began. Initially, the city tried to downplay the case, claiming Walsh had acted within policy. Marissa pushed back. Evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses confirmed Anders' heroism. Marcus Hayes, the boy who had screamed for help, provided a clear statement. The crowd at the lake backed up Anders' story. The body cam footage showed nothing suspicious about Anders' actions. It only showed Walsh's bias. The public reaction became intense. News outlets covered the story extensively. Veterans organizations spoke out. Firefighter unions demanded justice. Online petitions circulated demanding Walsh's termination. Commenters highlighted the 14 prior complaints and questioned why the Riverside Police Department had allowed him to remain on the force. People were outraged, but Andres stayed focused. He had seen injustice before. He knew public outrage alone did not change systems. Court filings continued. Each document emphasized Walsh's history, Anders' credentials, and the undeniable facts. He saved a life. Every detail of his military record, his firefighting service, and the events at the lake were submitted. The evidence left little room for doubt. The case was no longer just about Anders. It was about a pattern of abuse unchecked for over a decade. Walsh, meanwhile, tried to defend himself. Internal memos showed he had documented the 14 prior complaints and defended each dismissal. But with Anders' case, every previous action was now under scrutiny. Media coverage highlighted each incident. The narrative was clear. Walsh had a pattern of targeting black civilians, and the city had allowed it to continue. Public pressure mounted for accountability. During a settlement meeting, Marissa faced the city attorney. This isn't just about Mr. Washington. It's about the system that allowed Walsh to continue unchecked. 14 complaints ignored. 14 victims. Now you arrested a hero, and the evidence is undeniable. What's your offer? The city responded cautiously, knowing they could not risk losing in court. Years of misconduct exposed, millions in damages, and a public scandal would be disastrous. The negotiation dragged on. Anders listened quietly. Every detail mattered. Every missed step by the city now added weight to their liability. Finally, after 9 months of negotiation, an agreement was reached. $7.8 million. $1.2 million for Anders, civil rights violations, emotional distress, trauma, PTSD triggered by the arrest. $6.6 million in punitive damages, punishment for the pattern, for the 14 prior victims, for exposing systemic failure. The settlement made headlines nationwide. Anders Washington emerged victorious, but more than the money mattered. Officer Walsh was terminated, certification revoked. He could never work as a police officer again. Officer Nicole Chen faced a 60-day suspension, bias training, and transfer. Internal affairs officers who ignored complaints were reviewed. 3 were demoted, 1 terminated. The system itself was forced to reckon with its failures. 14 complaints were reopened. 7 resulted in sustained findings of misconduct. 3 resulted in settlements. The pattern was officially recognized. Anders reflected on the years of service, the combat deployments, the injuries, and the countless lives he had saved. Nothing, he realized, guaranteed immunity from bias. Not the Purple Heart, not the Bronze Star, not his firefighting career. But courage, integrity, and persistence could force accountability. His experience became a lesson. Exposing patterns of abuse required evidence, courage, and the willingness to fight back. Simone stood by him throughout the process, steadfast. She had held him that first night, shaking and exhausted, whispering, "We are going to fight this." She had been true to her word. The settlement was a victory, but the emotional scars lingered. The arrest, the humiliation, the disbelief that saving a life could be criminalized, they remained. Anders spoke at a local event months later, addressing first responders, veterans, and the public. Courage does not guarantee safety, he said. But standing up, documenting abuse, and demanding accountability, that can change systems. My fight was never just for me. It was for every person who was silenced because of bias. We have to keep fighting. The case of Andrew Washington became a symbol. A decorated veteran, firefighter, and EMT had been criminalized for heroism. A child's life saved became the catalyst for exposing a pattern of systemic abuse. The $7.8 million settlement was not just financial. It was proof that evidence, persistence, and courage could challenge injustice, even when authority was against you. For Walsh's victims, justice finally arrived. The 14 previously dismissed complaints were no longer forgotten. The system could no longer ignore patterns. Accountability had consequences. And for Andrew Washington, it was a reaffirmation. Heroism mattered, but so did standing up when systems failed. Andrew Washington sat on the porch of his home, the late afternoon sun softening the edge of a long winter day. The lake rescue, the arrest, the lawsuit, it all felt surreal. 7 weeks had passed since the freezing water and the cold metal cuffs. 7 weeks since heroism had been punished instead of celebrated. He took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the air against the scars on his body, both visible and invisible. Simone joined him with 2 cups of tea, handing him one. "You okay?" she asked gently. Andre stared at the steaming cup. "I saved a child. I did my job. And I got arrested for it. Even after all I've done, all I've survived, they still treated me like a criminal. Because I'm black." Someone put her hand on his. "But you fought back. You made them face it. That's what matters." Andre nodded. He had spent hours reviewing every detail of Walsh's record. The 14 prior complaints, the dismissals, and the testimonies of the victims. Each story had been ignored by the system until now. He realized the settlement was just one piece of change. The firing of Walsh, the retraining, the reopenings of prior complaints, they mattered far more. Patterns were being broken. The system was being forced to acknowledge its failures. Months after the settlement, Andre visited Riverside Lake again. The same path. The same water, now warmer under the sun. He paused where Owen had nearly drowned, remembering the boy's face, pale and gasping, and Marcus screaming for help. He remembered the ice-cold shock of the water, the panic that had gripped him only for a split second before training and instinct took over. He shivered, not from the temperature, but from the memory. A group of local kids played along the shore, supervised by parents. Andre walked past, careful to stay visible but not intrusive. A boy dropped a ball near the water's edge. Andre picked it up, handed it back, and the boy's eyes lit up. In that simple exchange, he realized something important. The world would always have risks, but courage and care could make a difference. The news coverage of the settlement and Walsh's termination had spread far beyond Riverside. Other departments took notice. Internal affairs units reviewed their processes. Policies were updated. Officers were reminded that unchecked bias had consequences. Andre understood that change was slow, but visible now. For the 14 prior victims, justice had finally arrived, even if delayed. Andre also thought about the psychological scars. Not from combat, not from firefighting, but from being arrested for doing what was right. That fear, that humiliation, would not leave overnight. He attended therapy sessions, processing trauma triggered by the arrest. PTSD was a silent visitor, resurfacing memories of being powerless when authority turned against him. Echoes of combat where control was critical, but life was fragile. Through it all, he leaned on his family. Simon remained his anchor. His firehouse brothers offered unwavering support. His fellow veterans connected, understanding how bravery could be misunderstood or even punished. Andre realized he was not alone. He had survived life or death situations abroad. Now he had survived injustice at home. Both required resilience. Both demanded courage. During a local town hall meeting, Andre spoke publicly for the first time about the systemic issues the case exposed. "This is not just about me," he said. "It's about a pattern of abuse that has gone unchecked for years. It's about people being targeted because of skin color, even when doing the right thing. 14 complaints ignored. One arrest of a hero. That pattern is now visible. That pattern is broken. But we must stay vigilant. We must ensure this doesn't happen again." The audience listened intently, some nodding, some taking notes, others visibly emotional. Parents, firefighters, veterans, police officers, and community leaders all felt the weight of the story. Andr's message was clear. Accountability works, but only when courage meets persistence. Months later, Marcus and Owen visited Andr at the firehouse. Owen was healthy, smiling, full of energy. Marcus looked at him with a seriousness beyond his years. "You saved my friend. You saved him from dying. I never forgot that." Andr smiled, kneeling to their level. "I just did what anyone should do when someone needs help. But I'm glad you're both okay." Marcus hesitated, then added quietly, "I told everyone. People listened this time. They saw what happened. They know you're a hero." Andr's chest tightened. It was simple, direct, the clarity of a child's words cutting through years of doubt and systemic neglect. Sometimes, he realized, the truth only needed to be witnessed. Sometimes, courage had to be undeniable to be acknowledged. Even after the settlement, Andr continued to serve. Firefighting EMT calls, so with a renewed sense of purpose. He trained younger firefighters not just in rescue techniques, but in resilience, in ethical courage, and in recognizing systemic challenges. He spoke to veterans about reintegration, bias, and advocacy. Each story shared was a lesson. Each experience a tool to prepare others for the realities of a world where heroism did not always guarantee respect. The city, for its part, took corrective actions. Walsh was gone. Officer Chen was retrained and transferred. Internal affairs personnel were disciplined. Policies were rewritten. For the 14 prior victims, settlements and reviews brought acknowledgement of wrongs done. For the community, the story became a reminder. Patterns of bias are dangerous, and accountability must be enforced, even when it is uncomfortable. Andr Washington reflected on all he had endured. From combat injuries in Iraq and Afghanistan to life-saving rescues in freezing water, and then being arrested for heroism. The arc of his life had been extreme, testing courage, patience, and persistence at every turn. And through it all, he had learned that survival wasn't just physical, it was moral. Standing for justice, even against powerful systems, was a battle in itself. He looked toward Riverside Lake one last time that day, the sun dipping behind the clouds, casting a golden reflection on the water. A child laughed in the distance, and a parent held a hand tightly. Andr smiled faintly, understanding that heroism and accountability could coexist. That courage, even when misunderstood, could change systems. That patterns of abuse could be exposed, and change could be forced. For Andr, the lake was no longer just a site of terror and injustice. It had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of one person to create change. His body bore the marks of combat and rescues, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He knew that no medal, no recognition, and no settlement could erase the memory of being treated unjustly. But they could serve as proof that fighting back mattered. Andr Washington had jumped into freezing water, saved a life, and faced arrest for it. He had stood against systemic abuse, and the consequences had been profound. The $7.8 million settlement was substantial, but the real victory was exposing the pattern, holding authority accountable, and showing the world that courage, integrity, and persistence can change systems. And as he walked away from the lake, hand in hand with Simone, Andr knew one thing clearly. He would never stop standing for what is right, because heroism is not just about saving lives. It's about demanding justice when the system fails.